I said I would try until I was about 45 years old or till the money runs out, whichever one
Wow.
comes first. Imagine I made 35 eggs, and at the end of it, we only had four. I would lie on the public bathroom floor to insert what they call the progesterone capsule up my hoo-ha. Hi, my name is Effie, and today we're going to be talking about how not to go broke trying to have a baby.
I just wanted to give a quick trigger warning. This episode does contain talks of child loss, miscarriage, and IVF, which may be very difficult for people who are currently going through this to hear. So I just want to let you know that before you start this episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Don't Go Broke Trying. I am your girl, Reni, back in your headphones, and I am really excited about this episode. I know this season we've been having a lot of guests, and I feel like every single guest has hits. We've been talking about prenups, we've been talking about investing, we've been talking about debt repayment, and today we have a topic that we've never spoken about before, and that topic is raising a family. I feel like we talk about raising a family when it comes to the cost behind, daycare and other things like diapers and all those costs, but we don't really talk about what happens if you're not able to conceive naturally or you have difficulty conceiving naturally. How much will it actually cost to even have that baby? So today, the whole topic of the conversation is how to not go broke trying to have a baby. So I have Effie with me today. Hi, Effie. How are you?
I'm good, Rennie. I'm
Thank
good. How are you, girl?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for being here.
Of
I
course.
would love you to introduce yourself to everyone and just tell us a little bit about you. So tell us who you are, what you do, and why you do it.
Oh my God, I get this question a lot, and I think I'm most awful with it. My husband say I don't put myself out there, but hey, let's reframe that in a positive way today. My name is Effie Frucci. I am a daughter. I am a mother. I am a wife. I'm a human being, and I love, love, love people. I love serving people in any form and shape, and that means from whatever talent and gifts that I have, sharing that with people. But outside of that, in terms of practicality, what I do each and every day is I am a speaker and a consultant. I speak on various topics from confidence building to navigating career transition to even wellness in the workplace with leaders, stakeholders, and you name it. I also have my charity foundation, ODHE, where I do free or low cost access to education for BIPOC women and girls. So that way they can tap into their own greatness, whatever that looks like for them. But again, like I said, I wear multiple hats, is what I should say. And as an entrepreneur, I am very grateful for the work that I do. And I do this because it is my purpose, is my calling. And when you're given such responsibility and such incredible gifts, it is our responsibility and honor to be able to share that with others who need a little glimpse of it, to know that it's all okay. You just need to keep putting one foot in front of the other and you reach your goals.
Excellence, Black excellence is what we see right now. She is a consultant, a speaker. She has her charity, and that's actually how I met Effie. And you are a mother, okay? Your
I love
newest
that title.
title. Your newest title,
Hmm.
and a very exciting title. And I'm so happy that you have that title now, and we're going to get to
Thank
that.
you.
But before we get into that, I always like to start off with your first memory of money and how you grew up. So, do you know what your first memory of money was, and how did that impact the way that you grew up?
To be honest with you, I think my first memory was when I was a child in Nigeria, and my mom was a baller. I say this because I say it with pride, and she was someone really growing up I admire all the way till now. I still admire my mom. She had multiple businesses, and she was a missionary. Her heart was for serving the people, and she spent years doing that. And I think for us, it was mostly just living in that comfortability while we were actually in Nigeria because my mom was doing missions work. We were out there. And eventually came time because my, biological father at the time was based in Belgium. So it came time, me after surviving like this illness that almost took me hostage, I guess, in a hospital for almost 10 years. My mom was like, yeah, let's reconnect. Let the full family reconnect. So we're now thinking of moving to Belgium, right, to be closer, because that question's coming up. Where's my dad? Where's my dad? I know that he's there, but I don't see him that often. So when we moved to Belgium, that's when the shig became real. Like everything became real in terms of money, because we had a comfortable comfortable life in Nigeria, a house and all that stuff. My mom had saved a lot of things for us to be able to have a comfortable life, go to school wherever we wanted. So graduating high school at 13, moving to Brussels, a whole new place, and nobody knowing how to speak the language except me. I only knew how to sing. But when we got there, the house wasn't there. The lifestyle we were all dreaming of wasn't there.
Mm.
I know. We're just getting in, and I'm giving you a shock already.
Yep.
But all to say, my mom was sending money literally into like a hole that kind of just went into thin
Oh.
air.
Wait,
So
so your
this
mom was sending money to your dad in Belgium?
Yes, yes, to kind of prepare the life for her
Oh,
children for this beautiful transition and for arrival. I wanted to be a doctor at the time, a gynecologist specifically. And I was like, oh yeah, by the time I'm done, I want to go to medical school, graduate, have my babies by 25, all that whole dream. So we got to Belgium. There was no house, there was no car, there was nothing. So the lifestyle that we were being prepared for wasn't there. It was all off, and he had spent a lot of it opening a very fancy brothel that we would learn later on. So,
oh my
all to
goodness.
say that we were all cramped into this nice little studio, or one, I wouldn't even call it a one bedroom because even they had a separate room, but there was like a bunk bed for my brothers at the time. So it was just very awkward. And for me, I was kind of like, whoa, what is this? And
When,
that's when we realized a lot of the pots of gold had already dried up and it was already too late. So we just had to start back again. And my mom being so resilient really taught us before that you have to be very, very grateful in regardless of what situation you're in, because we had life and that means we can actually keep fighting every single day. We can go and do something with our lives to earn money short of sin. So it was all about perspective and changing our mindset. And to be honest, to this very day, I think that situation really taught me about how to look at money and not love it in a way that it controls my life, but just know that even when you lose it, you always get it back because we all did in our respectful ways. So,
you,
but when you've lived in poverty, you understand how to enjoy every single dollar and not to
yeah.
waste.
Wow. I've asked everyone this question, but that is the most shocking answer that I've had. But I hate that your dad did that. I really do hate that
Hey,
he did
he's
that.
human. We all
But
make mistakes. I've come to forgive him because of my own self growth, and I hope that he can forgive himself ultimately
I hope
wherever
so
he
too.
is. But it happens. You just got to
Yeah.
move on and move on with your life.
Yeah, and you are very resilient, and I'm sure we'll see a lot more of that resilience throughout your story as we speak. So let's get into trying to have a baby. You said your dream was, I'm gonna go to med school, graduate, have a baby by 25, start my family. So, what was your expectation of the process as you went to school, graduated, and
You know what? My expectation was, again, you arrive in Belgium, you go to this fancy school or any school that you've been put into, and you sort of graduate and move on to the next chapter of your life, which is perhaps getting a job. The sort of thread that was, the way the world was built. You do all these things and there's an order and structure to things. So in my mind, I'm thinking all of those things will fall into place. I'll finish school, get a job, get married, have a child, and then live happily ever after. We all
yeah,
watched a lot of the Cinderella movies. So, but of course, that wasn't how it was shaped. I was 15 years old when my sister was born, and that situation that occurred in Belgium, inside the midst of all this whole chaos. And this is something I've talked about again in many occasions, including my TED Talk. So that's the whole conversation in itself. But being raised by my mom for years and my second mom, who was like my mom's sister and my best friend growing up, I really did get to see like incredible women who love growing a family and taking care of your children. So for me also taking care of my sister at 15, starting at that age and being so young myself and having my whole life not having the teenage phase or my early 20s or my early 30s was all spent really helping my mom take care of her made me sort of take a little bit of a step back, because I didn't get married at 25. I was still in med school at 25. Everything kind of just started way later, right? Because there was no money to go to school. So I did all the incredible things in the meantime to actually get there. And I guess being a chef kind of helped me push that trajectory forward. That's how I paid for medical school
oh,
at
I'm learning
18.
so much about you.
Honestly. Don't worry, it's not a surprise for a lot of people too. So I guess being a chef and working hard and saving all that money kind of helps me go into and get my midwifery and nursing diploma. So medical school gynecology didn't happen. I fell in love with midwifery because I felt my passion was really around babies and stuff. So I wanted to understand how to really care and support for a mother and a child. And going towards that route was, of course, a life-changing experience for me and my mom. We actually both went to the same classes together
Oh,
when we started this pursuit. My mom wanted to be a nurse, but she got a scholarship for education and pursued, teaching. So raising my sister, or to say, kind of made me stop. Wanted to have like a child really early on. And this was now me in my 30s. I got married in my early 30s. And so when I met my husband and we were talking about this, we thought, well, wait, enjoy your honeymoon phase, go through all that stuff. Don't rush having kids because I've spent my whole youth and adult years taking care of another human. So come 2020, right? COVID has happened. We were planning that same year in 2020, September, to have a very belated wedding reception. And that didn't happen. So everybody was in lockdown. So we looked at each other and we're like, yeah, there's no need to wait. Because my husband and I, we don't wait for the perfect time. We don't wait for the money or all these things to come together and be very clear before we make an action. So we just said, hey, we've always wanted kids. We both have the same values. Do you think we should start now? We prayed about it and we really kind of just thought, let's go on. So, of course, that was how we thought, oh, everything will walk smooth and fast, as you imagine. But by the end of the year, we realized that things weren't going. And for me, I knew that I wasn't on contraception pill. I never took it because I wanted to be very safe. I wasn't frugal, I guess, with my money, same way with my sex life. I wanted to be, yeah, I wanted to be with someone who I felt could honor my body and treasure who I am, because the act of love making, for those who are listening, is a very precious thing. You're giving away parts of yourself, so you need to choose right who you want to do that with and also who you want to be the father of your children. So in a way, I kind of kept myself for that man to be. So all to say that when things wasn't happening, I knew something was wrong. And that's why we said, let's call our family doctor, talk to him about it. And before we knew it, he was like, okay, let's run some tests. While that was going on, we went to Banff and we were up in the highs of the mountains, and we got a call while we were at Moraine Lake, actually. I would never forget it. And he just said, we've received the test back and I'm going to recommend you guys to a fertility expert because we found some things that we just want them to be able to look through with you guys, as they only have such limited understanding, but someone who works within this field will be able to give you a better explanation. So our chances in the end was then left for IVF to be the route that we would take. It's not an easy thing to hear, or to do, to learn that after all these years, that's the only option for you. But in time, we made peace with things as they are because you can't control your situation. And we just gave the rest to the Lord and move forward with grace, with so much hope, believing that everything will work out as it's supposed to be and meant to be.
wow. And what would the timeline look like for this? So you got married and you said, okay, let's wait a few years before we start trying. So how long were you trying before you went to the doctor and then they give you this news?
To be honest with you, we started this around March. I had just turned 33 March, and then the lockdown happened that same weekend. So from March to about, I would say around early November was when we reached out to the doctor. They would say
Okay.
wait a year. I don't like waiting. If I know something is wrong, trust me,
You
for
felt
someone
you
who don't
felt
like
something was
waiting,
wrong.
you
Yeah.
can see how long I've waited for this, right? So
Yes.
so I wanted to progress things a little bit faster, you would say. So
Yeah.
by November, I was just like, yeah, what are we waiting for? Let's reach out. The least they can say is, okay, keep on trying again, or let's revisit this in a couple of months. But I was very persistent, as I always am. And I just said, this was going on. I know my body. I've spent my whole life, like I
Yeah.
said, most of my childhood I spent in a hospital. And when you're given a second chance, you don't take it for granted because you know everything about what you eat, what you're doing to survive. And you take things so preciously. So for me, I knew something was wrong. And that's why
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for our family doctor. And this again goes to say it's very important that you have doctors that are advocates for you and see you as a human, not just another resource or some sort of paycheck or whatever.
Yeah.
So he really saw my concern and he fell right through to help us and help us start that next step, I guess, in a way.
And when you went to the fertility doctors and they gave you options, was it IVF is the only option, or did they say, we can do egg donation, surrogacy, IUI? Were there different options, or was it strictly like go for IVF?
Yeah, so I guess of course you're looking at what? It took like 5 years in total, 7 rounds to get here. Of course, at the beginning, when we're looking at this, IVF and IUI was what they had recommended that we could actually try. Donor eggs or sperm donor, those were not things that were of concern to us. They did discuss it much later, by the time I guess into like the third or the fourth cycle round that we had, just as an option for us to consider. But there was nothing wrong. I was making eggs. In fact, I was overstimulated at one point, which I later found out in the seventh round that most of the way that they had been harvesting my eggs, if I don't know if you see the picture, but I have my hands in air quotes here, but they were not particularly serving my body. And that's one thing, again, you need to be able to learn that when you're going through IVF, it's good for you to know how your body's reacting to certain things. And if you don't feel comfortable and you want a second opinion, where there is one, I always urge people to get it. But of course, we didn't know this until much later. So we did IVF from the very start because I wanted to try with both of our eggs and our sperm. And we had harvested, I believe, at the first round, about 36 eggs was what
Oh,
I had
wow.
developed.
Okay.
So there's lots of egg. Your girl's making egg pop in them because God gave us lots of them. But
Yes.
let's just say that life just happened and some things are unexplainable. So we did that. They did the egg retrieval, and as soon as the egg retrieval was done, we went straight into the embryo transfer a month later because you get the medication and you're onto the nest. So I wanted it to just be quick, quick, quick. What I didn't realize is the toll that also takes on your body doing it like back to back. So yeah, we did that 2 rounds later just to try something different. We did the IUI too, and that also didn't work. From all the medication injection, we both just decided that we're going to take a break. We looked at surrogacy, explore that and what it looks like in Canada. Is different than the US. We, of course,
Yeah.
I didn't know that you have to find a woman in Canada to offer willingly to carry your child. It's not something that you can pay them for that service for. However, you can cover their expenses. So finding someone that you can trust with something of this
Yeah.
magnitude, of course, is very challenging, right? So
Yeah.
the other thing was we had a friend who wanted to carry for us and be our surrogates when we were looking. I think this was now our fourth or fifth round after I have had the most painful miscarriage the second time around. And everything was just very much like a chaos. And we weren't happy at this point now with this clinic that we were in because we were beginning to feel like they weren't moving to the rhythm of where we're at. They refused. They said that they won't take this friend of mine because she had a medical condition that was an issue for them, even though she had carried a child and she had birthed two beautiful children without the
Mm.
medical condition, because it's not my story to share. But they wouldn't accept her. We did find another clinic who would, but again, their reviews for unorthodox things that they do say yes to, you have to be mindful of that, right? You don't
Yeah.
want to just jump in and say because they can do it. That's how a lot of people get into trouble. So we decided that if it was God's will, there would be a way that is less painful and less stressful. So we sort of told our friend, let's put it on pause and keep the conversation going. But let's see where all of these things take us. But I'll just say the whole thing was mentally exhausting. I
Mm.
can't tell you how annoying it was when you actually have all these opportunities on the table, but none of them seems promising. So I just took a break. I let my body recover and we went again because I knew I was still heartbroken from everything else. I knew I wanted to carry my child because I knew I couldn't survive without trying and doing that. It's always been my wish ever since I was a little girl, and also raising my sister to carry my own and deliver my own. And I was walking through therapy on that part as well to be, if it doesn't happen, what would we do, right?
Yeah.
Would we go back to the donor eggs and all that kind of stuff? So it wasn't as if I wasn't producing healthy eggs. Every one of them was tested genetically. It was just, yeah, one of those things we can't explain. So we kept on trying, and I said I would try until I was about 45 years old or till the money runs out, whichever one
Wow.
comes first. I said
Okay.
45 because, again, leading by example from my mom. She had my sister at 45, and now my
Okay.
sister's what, 23 this December. It's a beautiful relationship in terms of what they have and also the difference between my 15-year gap with her. We've gone from mother role to sister to best friend, and then now we're learning to be sister and best friend, and me less mothering, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
it's not that bad of a difference if I had had a child at 45. So that's where I laid it all on the altar for God to take
Mhm.
it and make his will be known. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to take a step back and just really talk about what the process looks like. I know you gave us kind of an overview, but
Mm,
for those who may not know what IVF is, so it's in vitro fertilization. What
yes.
does the process that you went through look like in order? What does it mean when they say around? Because we hear these terms a lot. It's like, oh, I went through 7 rounds of IVF, but like, what does that even mean?
For
Could you break it
sure,
down?
for sure. I'll give a little snippet, but there are more videos of it because I got too much of it. Also on
Yeah.
my Instagram page, that is still very delayed coming for the last three. But we'll get into some of the nitty gritty here. Is that the first thing you got to realize is that the moment you've been told that this is your chances, or the moment you've chose this, or the moment, I guess when you say chose again, is you've tried everything and it's not working, and this is all that you've now made peace to do. You were seeing the doctor, they run tests, they check everything to make sure that both sperm and egg is healthy to use. Once that is, they would actually give you the rounds of medication to prepare your body for the egg retrieval. Now, when you have that medication, all to say is you're going to look very bloated. For most cases, a lot of people look like they're already pregnant. For me, I was walking around with heavy stomach that looked like a watermelon. Most season we were already like coming into the fall, so you wouldn't even notice because of the way I dress and against your decorum. How do you carry yourself when you have so much on your shoulders? That also plays into it. So you go around putting this medication in at a very specific time that you've been given according to your care plan. And once they have asked you to come into the clinic close to the time of that medication round finishing, they would check your uterine lining, check your eggs, make sure everything is producing or working as it's supposed to be. And once it is, and you've fertilized or you've made lots of eggs that they're comfortable with, then they would ask you to take a particular a trigger shot. That trigger shot is meant to prepare your body now for harvest in those eggs. And in a way, it also sort of stops the process so you're not making even more as you go. So it sort of pauses things and then prepares you for the next phase. You go into the clinic after that, and then you get into the hospital or your clinic, and then they just check your vitals. They put some drips on because you have to go under anesthesia for this part. Unfortunately, it's not something that you can do being awake. So hopefully you're not allergic to anesthesia. So once you go in there, they numb your area downstairs and then they sort of get to work. In this particular process, for me, I feel things. I don't know a lot of people, but even when I'm sleeping, I'm a very light sleeper. It didn't matter whether I was under anesthesia, I could still feel things in my body, and you know something is happening, even though I wasn't in pain. So in there, they bring the whole process. I won't go into the gory part, but you are on the table essentially, and they would take a very tiny tubes and stuff, or they take a little extractor, set of like a pen, it almost looks like, and then they extract all the eggs safely, right, from your fallopian tube and all of it, so that way you can take that safely and put them into the Petri dish for what they would do next and all that stuff, or whatever else they need to do it for. So once that is done, you are then checked. You stay there, they give you medication, Advil, Tylenol, all that stuff, just to make sure that you're okay. You are very groggy, just remember that. You can't move for the first half an hour. You have to have someone take you home, essentially. It's not something that you can drive home yourself. That's something that they will tell you about. And then once that is done, they make sure that you pee because they don't want to, again, hit any vital organs that could actually prevent you from peeing or cause other internal issues. Once you're good, you can communicate even though you might still be groggy, and they've all signed you clear. Then they pass you on to your loved one to take you home. After that, the next phase is then embryo transfer. So now this phase, now you're thinking, do you do a fresh one, which is usually done straight away, or do you do a frozen embryo? The fresh one is they've now, again, taking the sperm donor and straight away doing that transfer, or the frozen one is your eggs have had time to continue to fertilize. They've developed into embryos and they've decided what grades that they are. Grade A, grade B, grade C, they're all different grades. Definitely do your research on this so you can understand more what the embryologist will tell you. If you don't want to do the research, or you do but you're still not sure, you can ask the embryologist. So they do all this grading based on the viability of the eggs. So which one is most likely to be successful? Now, there is no guarantee because nobody here is meant to play God. At the end of the day, they only give you the best possible chance of what they have learned and research and what they've seen. So they give you the best chances. And sometimes you can save eggs, even the ones that are not good. So we at the end, imagine I made 35 eggs. And at the end of it, we only had four eggs. So we started with about 16 eggs that were perfect. Then we went to 7 embryos that were great. And by the time we actually spoke to the doctor, we had like four.
Wow.
Four
Okay.
eggs was what we had. And in that four eggs, two were awesome, two potentially could have genetic disorders or whatever. So you could still use that because they were very much like a, I think 35 percentile sort of a thing, but we just kept them in cryo storage just in case. So they used those first two basically essentially for the first and the second embryo transfer. And then the other two later on, when we knew we were pregnant with our daughter Eden, was when we signed off and said we wanted them discard because then they will not be used for research purposes or whatever. You can make those decisions. So that's the stage basically in terms of the egg retrieval, the embryo transfer part. You can be awake for that. Your partner can come in. But during COVID, my husband couldn't come in for a lot of those because he had to literally be on the phone on FaceTime. And that
Oh,
killed
wow.
me very much because I was alone, I was cold, I was in there. And it was just one of those things where you can't fight with people. You just have to go with the rules, right? So
Yeah.
it was really hard. And even when they gave me the bad news that it wasn't successful the first time, that was also disheartening. Or even when they told me I was having a miscarriage, do I needed a D&D? He was telling me all the stuff they were saying because he was on the phone. I had phased out for that part. So it was really difficult. So once the embryo transfer has been done, you now wait. This is the season that really I urge people, if you're listening to this and you're in these trenches, do find things that make you feel joy. Talk to your therapist, your family, do things that distracts you for that 14 days while you're waiting, because you have to wait for your body to do the work basically. And while you're waiting, you're taking injections, you're taking medication. Now,
Oh.
what you must understand that a lot of people don't see behind my day-to-day life is why I'm talking to you like this, Reni. And I had meetings, I was doing keynotes, I was running my charity, I was running an event, planning festivals. I literally, the moment when my alarm goes off on my phone, I have to stop that. I would lie on the public bathroom floor to insert what they call the progesterone capsule up my hoo-ha. Two tablets, three times a day. So I'm doing this in the morning from 7, one at 3, and then one at 9 or 10 p.m.
Wow.
That on top of medication, progesterone that I have to inject into my thigh, my intramuscular muscle, every single 3 days as well. And that is painful. It's a thick, juicy needle. And I literally have a phobia. Like, I literally hate needles.
Do you still
Again,
have a phobia of needles?
girl, I still do. It's not going to
Okay.
just vanish. No, I hate it even more,
Okay.
more so because of that. But you get brave. And I cry
Yeah.
through a lot of this, right? Because it's not something that I can say was a pretty thing. I cry through it. My husband couldn't give it to me because I couldn't accept someone injecting me. So every single thing for the past 7 rounds and 5 years, I gave myself those injections willingly because I knew that it was for what I have now. So I would do that part, right? Again,
Yeah.
but you inject yourself constantly, and then by that date when it's ended, you have to go into Life Labs or wherever you do your blood test, and then you do a HCG blood test to determine if you are pregnant. Now, for this part, it's very straightforward. You go in, they draw blood, they take it, they test it. If you are pregnant, you will see an elevated number on that HCG. So anything between 300, 5, 6, usually people say it's a good sign because it depends on how high it is. Some people get 1,000 straight away. That means they might be having twins or multiple pregnancy. If you have that 3, 6, you might be just having one child. It really depends. Then you come back in 2 days after that because the goal for the doctors is they want to see an elevation of your HCG. When you come back in 2 days, they take another blood, and if it goes up, then that means you're having a healthy or your pregnancy is prolonging. Now that is the stop. Then you have to wait again for 7 days, I believe, or so, because now everything feels like a distant memory. But you then have to wait to then go and do your first ultrasound. Now that part is the other side of the killing waiting because you're waiting to hear this baby's heartbeat and
Yeah.
whether or not you truly are pregnant because the blood tells you you are. Now the doctors or the sonographer have to then see something. You have to hear something to make it real. And at that point, that's where a lot of the stress really starts to come in because you're excited, you're trying to hold it together, you want to tell the whole world. But here, you can't because you have to first of all see that. And some people do, and then it gets all sad because when you can't see the heartbeat or confirm that there's a viable pregnancy, blah, 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 it becomes a problem. So for me, we waited, we went the first time. It didn't happen. The second time I was bleeding through that. I was having a miscarriage before we even knew what was happening. So that was really stressful. This is why the sight of blood throughout IVF was so scary for me. Because when I saw blood, I felt like the world was ending. Even with my seventh round with Eden, I thought that we were. Because when we actually saw just a flicker of blood, I called the doctor and my midwife straight away, or the doctor at the time while we're waiting to get to midwife straight away, and went and got checked. So they will do that ultrasound and see what happens. And then if you do have that, then you continue your medication for 12 weeks to help your placenta grow. So that is medication every day, not just the capsule in your vagina. You're taking estrogen tablets, and you have to take this again multiple times throughout the day. Let's just say I had about 12 to 15 alarms in a day. That reminds me of different medications that I have to take. You have to take antibiotics as well 7 days post the embryo transfer to avoid any infection. You also have to take other medication based on your own health and all that stuff. How healthy you are determines what they also give you to better your chances. But all to say is you are going to be on a lot of medication.
Wow.
And taking lots of injections. Overall, there's been thousands of medications that are stored in my house, and
Thousands.
thousands.
Okay. I feel like I knew about IVF, but I just didn't know how all encompassing it is. I think
Oh
that's
yeah,
the right word to use because it seems like it basically dictates your days and your weeks and your months and your basically a
in
year of
life.
your life basically.
Yeah,
And you can go through all of those stages and still not
you
carry a
have
baby
nothing
to
to show for it.
term.
Yeah, you have nothing to show for it. Just scars
Wow.
on your body and bruises and pain and a heartbreak that no one is ever going to see or mostly even understand, especially those who've
Yeah.
never walked that same
Yeah.
path. Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that because I think it will open a lot of people's eyes to just how intense this process is. Now, I want to really get into the financial side of it because
Mm,
that's the main thing that a lot of people are wondering about. They
for
want to know
sure.
how much does this actually cost? Is this an extremely expensive procedure to do? Because it does sound like a lot of medications, a lot of doctor's visits. Also, I want to know, like, how were you able to work? I know you are an entrepreneur, but like, if someone has a regular 9 to 5, how does that work when they are trying to do all of this? So, first question I would say would be, what were some of the upfront costs that you faced with IVF?
To be honest with you, I think the upfront cost is the medication, paying for the consultancy. I say consultancy, aka getting everything genetically tested, right? So that part was something that we chose. So if you want to do any add-ons, that's not part of the package, I guess, that you're offered by your IVF clinic, then those, of course, have to come out in pockets. And then going back to one thing you mentioned there was at the time we started this in 2020, I was still with my previous company. I was still working at so that was more or less not a nine, I would say 9 to 5, but you have some great options for hours, flexing depending. If I could wing it, some projects allow some flexibility, but some of them did not. So by the time we really started this, I was at and it was rough. It was very rough because I was working at I had just started and launched ODHE at the same time in October of that 2020. I was also doing my speaking engagement mostly on the weekends and traveling. So there was a lot going on in silos that a lot of people didn't see or didn't understand. And I still have to show up 1,000% like
Yeah.
myself because I'm a ambitious woman. I'm a high achiever. The expectations I have for myself, my husband says he makes him nervous, but also very proud because I get SHIT done. And I have such high expectations for myself. Because of that, I put so much pressure to achieve so much. And you could say go back to like my childhood and all that stuff. We've done all this chit chat through therapy, but it is who I am. I want to be the best of what I can be because I feel I owe myself that. And so it was really hard, doing meetings, doing calls, and all that stuff. But eventually I left the organization, or should I say, I was made redundant before I handed my notice. So it worked out best because I got my own suffrage package. Praise
Love it for
Jesus.
you.
I got the rejection on the day that I was going to hand it over and on the day I was going in for an embryo transfer to be exact. And it was
Wow.
so bittersweet because I was like, y'all couldn't choose a worse day to do this. But I was like, you were also going to do it just tomorrow. So what's the difference? God wanted something better for your life. So doing 9 to 5 is not easy. But what you can do is hopefully you have allies and you have a sponsor and a mentor and someone, if just one person that you can confide in that can provide support for you. I had that, and she was my, I guess you would say, mentor at the time. And she was able to do as much as she could because she also had rules that they had to follow. The bigger the organization, the bigger the red tapes that you got to go through, right? So, but in a way, I stayed for the period I did because I had outgrown my role. I was trying to progress. That wasn't happening. And as a Black woman, that's a whole different conversation in the space that I was. Consultancy, there's so much red tapes and bureaucracy. But all to say was, I saved a lot through that job, and it fueled my dream of becoming a mother. So there's always a means to an end. I do things because there is meaning and there's purpose to it. Can he help my family? Can he help me with my dreams? Can he help someone get food on the table? If all those things doesn't align, there's no way I'm going to put myself through suffering. And I did suffer when I was in that place for a long time, not just mentally, because I took in the space of 5 years of doing this, or why I was in that company for 4 years. I really did go on two sort of like mental breaks because I just couldn't deal with the fact that I had lost a child and come on a call while somebody's telling me their cat died. Like, honey, I
Yeah.
feel for you, but this is a
A little,
child
a
that
bit
had just
different.
lost. It's a very different comparison.
Yeah.
And we have to be mindful of things like that. And yeah, so it was hard doing those things, but that's where ultimately my husband and I realized we weren't joyful in our lives. You know, balancing that chaos. He was in a job as well that he wasn't in love with. And I was in a place where I had mentally checked out. And we just felt that we both needed a reset because we don't like staying in a situation that doesn't please us or please us to in a way that also pleases God, because then we're ungrateful or we're complaining. But we needed to find a solution. And we're grateful now that we had an opportunity to pursue different paths in 2022. So I guess, yeah, all to say in your question was the medication, the medical testing, genetic testing, making sure that we had viable eggs that we could use, the embryo storage, the cryobank, we had to pay for that. So that cost between like 700 through 1,000 every year that you have to pay for that. So you have to
Storage.
think about that. And if you also want to store your eggs separately that you don't want to make into embryos, every time you want to have a cryobank, just remember there's a price tag that come with this. I think the most expensive of them all is the physical toll that it takes on your
Yeah,
body.
that makes sense. So you said that, medicine and the storage, those are some of the costs that you face. So does this mean that the actual treatment is covered by your provincial? No? No?
Love
Your
the optimism.
okay. So
To
how does
be
that
fair,
work? Because a lot of
no,
people
to
want to
be
know.
fair.
A lot of people want to know if it's insurance that covers it, or is it personally funded, or is it government funded? So I guess government is not funding that.
No, I guess to be fair with you, there is government funding now in BC. In
Okay.
Ontario, when we looked at it, they already provided, I believe, one treatment as well. And BC has just introduced that just about a week ago,
So for
or
one
2 weeks.
round.
Yes, for one round. You have
Okay.
to be recommended by your doctor. I did a panel discussion on this with some of the community members here who were very active in that space to shed some light on it. So definitely talk to if you're in British Columbia, talk to your family doctor. They have to help you apply and put your name forward for that so you can get around. Medication, however, is not covered on that. And there's also age restrictions. So if you're 41 going on 42 by the time you've been pulled through, it doesn't matter. But if you're 42 trying to apply, you can't. So the age gap is 42, which I think is not fair. They should have
Yeah.
capped it at 45 because greater things have happened. But I guess because when you hit 35, you become a geriatric patient, which I think is ridiculous because a man came up with this, of course. I think it's just unfair because I have friends who are 42 and I've seen the sadness this has brought them, especially as everybody was waiting when they announced it last year. So for us, because we both had corporate world life, FE had insurance, but a lot of things weren't covered, especially IVF itself wasn't covered. I advocated for this very much. No success in terms of how companies can help people to get support around this. Some companies cover those, but not at the time for me. Mental health was covered in terms of your benefit package and all that stuff. So At the time, yes, those things were covered. So I was able to get therapy. Medications were covered. My husband's insurance also covered some of them, but some things would also be paid out of pocket. So certain medications are not covered by the government or by your insurance because they're for different brackets. So you have to pay those ones yourself, and they will cost pretty much around like 100, maybe 50 to 100 and $120. It just depends on what they are. Some form of oil or whatever it may be. So just be aware of that. And then there is also extra costs as well that your benefits might not cover. Maybe things for us like the actual embryo retrieval, or the egg retrieval itself, the embryo transfer itself. So these are where you're dropping large amounts of money to
Oh
do that.
gosh.
And
Okay.
medication, to give you an example here, is for my husband and I, imagine going into the clinic. The first thing, of course, we get asked is you have to pay to get your medication. So a single medication, for example, could cost you from between 5 to 10K. And not just for the egg retrieval or the
Wait,
transfer. Those are just associated medication that is also separate than the medication that you would take after you're now pregnant. So
wait,
this
wait,
is like
wait, wait.
preparation.
Okay, wait. 5 to 10K we're paying for the like, is that the needles that you're putting into your leg?
Needles, the medications, maybe you can get, the
Progesterone.
estrogen, but progesterone, the progesterone oils, some of the other medical tablets that you have to take. Again, like I said, based on your health, your own health, if you have to take other things that's not insurance covered, you might also have to pay those out of pocket.
Okay, so we're
So
looking
it
at
really just depends. Sometimes you might get lucky. You might pay some stuff for between like 2,000, 2,500. But I'm saying if you're actually like in a serious ballpark here, some of them
yeah.
can go up to 10K from my experience and what we've also experienced as well.
Okay, so let's say 10K or 5 to 10K. But that doesn't even include
The
the,
transfer.
so what,
I,
how much is it? How much are we thinking for the transfer? Oh gosh, this is expensive. This is expensive.
I feel like I
You
should pull up
should.
my account.
We need your bank statements. We need to see how much
Girl,
you guys are spending.
now I'm thinking I should have pulled up that bank statement for you. I
Oh,
didn't prepare that thought. But
yeah.
in all honesty, though, I think for the embryo transfer, when we had that, I believe that was between 2,500, just under 5 grand is the embryo transfer each round, right? For the egg retrieval, we also paid, I believe, between 2 to 3,000 for that egg retrieval to have that done. And then once you've been confirmed as pregnant, you've done the HCG and you're waiting to go and do the son of the heartbeats, you're going in to check and see that's all good. In that intermediary, you still have to take medication. So you have to pick up the medication. And for those, sometimes costs us between like 2,500 to 3K for those medications. And then you have to take those, and there is no guarantee, right? Because you buy them, you can't just say I'm buying it for the week of 14 to wait until I hear the heartbeat. You have to buy it for the duration of that
Oh.
12 weeks. So that's the other side of it. So they give you that medication to take, and once you are pregnant, you continue for the 12 weeks or 10 weeks, whatever you got. And
But
if you're
if you're
not
not,
pregnant, you have to stop the medication. And now what you got, girl? You got medication in your house that you can't use.
and it
And
only and I'm sure there's a lifespan to the medication as
some
well.
of them do. Some of the oils, I believe some of them are expiring now in 2026. So it really just depends on the shelf life of how they were produced, because some of them you have to take them as they come, or if not, you kind of, once they open, you have to
Done.
get rid of them, right? So that's the other side. Once the bottle is open, you can't use that. So that's the hard part of it. So yeah.
But it's given like 15, 20K that you're spending per round.
Yeah, absolutely. Between 15, 20K, and especially if you do it as in back to back, where we had 2 rounds of both egg retrieval, embryo transfer straight away, medication full on for the 12 weeks to help grow this healthy placenta. That, of course, almost took us close to 25K. So that's for those 2 rounds, and then you're have to consider the cost of also living through IVF. So what also needs to be paid? Your therapy, because you're going to need it. Paying your
Yeah.
rent, your mortgage. We have both. So now we're paying rent. We're also paying mortgage. And then you have to consider your cost of food, your clothes that you're wearing, because your body is going to change whether you like it or not. My closet has my clothes that I kept in there of Effie when I turned 30. I don't even fit into those jeans. I'll be lucky if one of my thighs even fit into one of the legs. Yeah, and then you're thinking about fitness. The list goes on that also I had to mentally prepare myself and take note of that would require money to be spent. So
Yeah.
yeah, but I guess in across all 7 rounds, the ballpark was around 65K. That was around that was spent to welcome one beautiful sunshine afterwards. And it was worth
Wow.
every single pain and struggle and every single dollar and penny. And I say that because, again, don't be frugal with your money, especially for anyone listening who are in your youth or young adults. It's okay to enjoy your life. I've been that girl who's a bougie on a budget. Nobody understands me. I enjoy my life. I enjoy it, but on a very nice, tight budget. I always find the best deals and stuff. So don't stop living or stop enjoying life. But I saved a lot and I was able to save up knowing what we were up against. Every single money was being well spent. And like I said, that's in 2020. We had moved our wedding to 2022, which later on happened. Now we're paying not just in dollars, but we're paying in euros because our wedding was in Italy. So I'm sending dollars to euros. That was even bleeding us even more. And that was when we decided that we needed to even be more proactive and we separated our funds to keep our money that we've already saved aside and also go in and talk to our bank advisor after speaking to our financial advisor. And we opened a line of credit just for IVF so we could
Oh,
see at
wow.
the end a printout of what is being spent, be
Mhm.
able to pay them back with whatever we're saving on the side so we can keep it separate from our own income, our investments. So none of those things are being tempered. Like you said, you don't want to go broke trying for a baby child.
Yeah,
Because then
exactly.
you'll be what? Having this baby and what? Looking for communal housing? Jesus,
Yeah.
have mercy on us. We can't do that. That's another level of pain that I just don't want
Yeah,
anybody to have to envision. So it
exactly.
really just has to come down to sitting down with your partner and having those difficult conversations. What can you do? What can you afford without also losing yourself and giving you a chance to still be able to enjoy some things of your life, if not everything. Because
Yeah.
my massage was still there, my therapy was there. Those were my non negotiables, right? So, yeah.
Okay, guys, this is Reni coming in, and I think this episode is getting long, but I want you all to hear the whole thing because FA gets into a lot more detail and she tells us a lot more of her story. So, what we're going to do is we're going to pause this week's and then we'll come back next week for part 2. So, stay tuned where we share the rest of FA's journey and all about how she was able to go through this journey that we call IVF. See you next week.